Good morning, seventh grade. We are now in week 2. So with week 2, we're going to focus on markups, discount, commission, sales tax. But we're going to start with converting because I want to make sure before we get into the discounts and the markups, we're going to need to make sure that we understand how to convert. So when you are converting a decimal to a fraction, let's just say I have the decimal 3/100. I'm sorry, 3/10. My bad, y'all. I have the decimal as 3/10. I want to go from here to a fraction. What you're going to do is you're going to take this. I'm going to say this is my tenths place, right? So because that's my tenths place, which is why you need to remember your place value, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put a 0.3 or 0 3/10, and I'm going to put a 1 under here. Because anything when you do divided by 1 is itself, right? So I'm just going to take this and divide it by 1. I'm going to put a multiplication symbol here, and I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10. Okay? So I go from my supposed whole number, which is 3/10, and I put a 1 underneath. Then I'm multiplying my numerator and my denominator, this and this, by 10. That's going to give me 3/10. Okay? That's how I figure out what my fraction is going to look like as a decimal. Or I'm sorry, when it started off as a decimal. So converting just means these are the same. This is the same as saying this. We're just showing it differently. Decimal to a percent. We'll stick with our 0 3/10. We'll stick with that and just kind of keep that consistent. So if I have 0 3/10, I need to go from a decimal to a percent. What is the highest percentage you can have before you, like when you get to one whole? So one whole gives me how much percent? 100%. So if I purchased a pizza and I ate the entire pizza, I purchased one pizza. Percentage-wise, I ate 100% of it. So they are the same, you're just representing them or showing them differently. So what you're going to do here is you're going to take your decimal and you're going to multiply it by 100. Okay? I don't want you to get confused and think this is a decimal before the 100. So, to avoid the confusion, and I know you guys remember this from when we were doing expressions and equations before we left school. Our parentheses mean to multiply. So I'm going to take this number and I'm going to multiply it with this number. And when I do that, I am going to get 30. This times this will give you 30. And you can use a calculator. We're talking about percents. So what do I need to add on to that? A percent sign. So you can either leave that there and then show 30%, or you can just add the 30%. So, because I'm talking about percent, and that is my final answer. So if you remember in class, I like to put little clouds around my answers so that they stand out for me. So if you have to put a cloud around your answer, Put a cloud around it for it to stand out. You can only put that on your paper. When in the assignment, you won't be able to do that. But on paper, you can do that. So let's move from a fraction to a decimal. So let's say I have this fraction here, 3/10. Well, I remember that. All you're doing is going the opposite direction, okay? We're just going backwards. So instead of us multiplying, and I said we're going backwards, we're going in the opposite direction. So if I go in the opposite direction, think what word meant opposite? It started with an I. Do you remember? Inverse. So I'm going to do an inverse. So I'm actually just going to take this 3 and divide it by 10. Up here I multiplied this decimal times here and I ended up with a fraction. This time I'm going to take my fraction and I'm going to divide my numerator into my denominator and I'm going to end up with my decimal. And then lastly for this part, we have a fraction to a percent. So I'm going to keep my fraction of 3/10, or 3/10. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to kind of do like what we did up here. You're going to do, that's the first step. There's 2 steps to this next one. The first step is I'm going to do this. So I'm going to write that again. But I can't stop here. Then I need to take this number here. You know what? I'm going to make that a little shorter so we can see that a little better. I'm going to take this number, which is my decimal. I'm going to take that decimal and I'm going to multiply it. Because remember, to go from a decimal to a percent, I have to multiply it times 100. And I get 30. Remember, we don't stop there though. You got to add your percent sign. And 30% is my final answer. Okay? So that's what we have for the conversion part. Can you give me that top? That's what we have for our conversions from decimal to fraction, decimal to percent, fraction to decimal, and fraction to percent. So lastly, we're going to look at the percents. So I'm going to look at how do I go on my percent side? How do I go from a percent to a decimal and a percent to a fraction? And remember, at any point in time, you can stop the video or rewind it and take a screenshot. I also will be uploading these specific notes on Google Classroom along with the assignment. So you'll be able to see it right away. What I am doing is I am creating a graphic organizer for you so that you can have all the conversions on one paper. So if you write it down, it sticks in your brain better, remember? So let's do the last one, which is our percents. So we need to go from a percent to a, what did I write? To a fraction. And from a percent to a decimal. Okay, so for this one, we're still going to look at our 30%. Okay, so if I have 30%, and I need to get from here to a fraction, I'm going to make this 30 what is this place? If this is my tenths place, and this is my, my ones place, this is my tenth place. But when we're talking about percent, this is actually 100. So in the other example, we did 10 because we had a decimal and then a number. This time we have an entire whole number. So when you have an entire whole number, I have 2 numbers. I need 2 zeros. In the other example, we had 1 number after the decimal, which means I only would use 1 0, which was why it was over 10. Okay? So the number of zeros is the number of place values you're looking at. This is a place value. Remember, the 0 is just a placeholder. It's not a place value. So this is 1 place value, so I need 1 0. This is 2 place values, so I need 2 zeros. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I'll leave this up so you can see that difference while I'm going. So I'm going to put my 30 on top. Okay, now you can leave it like this. However, you would need to simplify this. Normally, you would need to simplify it. In our classroom, we would leave it this way, but on the assignments, you might have to simplify. So let's see, how do I simplify? What number do they both share? This is where those math facts come in. What number do they both share? They both can share a 10. So if I divided my numerator and my denominator by 10, I'm going to get 3, because 30 divided by 10 is 3, and 100 divided by 10 is 10. So I still end up with about the same thing that I did here, because this was the same.
I need to use a microwave.
You gotta wait. So let me show you one. Oops. All right. I'm gonna rewrite that so you can see it a little better. Because it looked a little messy to me. So remember, we have 2 place values. So 1 0 and 1 0. This 0 was there, this 0 is here. So stop it if you need to, because I'm going to erase all those marks. Okay, so from a percent to a decimal, we want to do 30% again. So I'm going to go 30. So the same thing we did on the other side, we had 30, or we had 3 tenths, and we divided it by the number that was on the bottom, which on the other one was a 10. This time, we're doing 100. Remember, I said 2 place values gives me 2 zeros. So if I did 30 divided by 100, I'm going to get 0 and 3 tenths. Okay? Any questions that you have about converting? Please let me know. Like I've been saying, this is review. This is nothing new. So if you get stuck, please email me, send me a message. You can send Ms. Bass a message. We are here. You can send Ms. Cox a message. We are here to help you. Put your question in Google Classroom because someone else might have that question. And I will see you on the next video.